Let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking the shattering global implications of what happens when a classic science fiction concept suddenly and violently crashes into reality. We're talking about Genesis Redefined, the dawn of the human clone. For decades, this whole idea has lived purely in the realm of sci-fi movies and airport novels. But the actual scientific leaps required to pull it off, they are advancing way, way faster than most people realize. We are literally teetering right on the edge of a breakthrough that's going to fundamentally alter our entire trajectory as a species.
Seriously, imagine waking up tomorrow to a news alert buzzing on your phone that shatters the very definition of what it means to be human. What if the first officially confirmed human clone was born tomorrow morning? This isn't just some fun hypothetical exercise. It's a profound thought experiment exploring the chaos of someone successfully bypassing all mainstream scientific bans to bring a cloned human into the world. Now, keep in mind, for over 20 years, the international scientific community has held an incredibly strict, united front against reproductive cloning. The tech is heavily restricted, intensely monitored, and pretty much universally outlawed. But technology inevitably democratizes, right? The tools needed to perform complex genetics are getting cheaper and more accessible literally every single day. So the real question isn't, what if? It's what happens the morning after someone actually goes rogue and succeeds.
Section 1. Tomorrow's shocking headline. So here's the thing. We wouldn't hear this breaking news from a prestigious university or some major government lab. Obviously, right? Those self-imposed bans are just too strict. Instead, this earth-shattering announcement would likely leak from a highly isolated, privately funded clinic. We're talking about a facility operating deep in an offshore jurisdiction, or maybe a country with practically zero medical oversight. And when this leak finally hits the press, the announcement would instantly ignite a global ethical, legal, and social earthquake. I mean, this is the absolute epicenter of our ripple effect. Literally overnight, all of humanity would be forced to confront incredibly deep philosophical questions about identity, individuality, and, honestly, the soul. This wouldn't just dominate the news cycle, it would bring regular life to a grinding halt. Every government, every major institution, and pretty much every single person would suddenly be staring at science fiction dropping right into their morning news feeds, realizing the world they went to sleep in is entirely gone.
Section 2. The immediate legal chaos.
Think about our entire global legal system for a second. It is built from the ground up on the concept of traditional biological parentage. The law understands a mother, a father, and their offspring, period. So when faced with a clone, which by definition is an exact genetic copy of an existing person, effectively a delayed identical twin, the system immediately breaks down. The law quite literally doesn't have a box to check for this. Suddenly, we are faced with unprecedented legal headaches over how to classify this brand new human life. The whole infrastructure of civil society, everything from a basic birth certificate to fundamental citizenship rights, is completely unprepared for a person who doesn't have parents in the traditional sense, but rather a single genetic donor who might be, say, generations older.
The whole crux of the problem boils down to this seemingly simple but mind-bending legal dilemma. Is the clone a biological child or a delayed identical sibling? Just imagine a scenario where a wealthy 70-year-old billionaire decides to clone himself. The probate and family courts would be completely paralyzed, trying to determine guardianship and legal status. Is the newborn legally his offspring, entitled to all the rights of a child? Or are they technically his identical twin brother who just happened to be born 7 decades later? If that billionaire dies, does the clone inherit the fortune as a child, or do they share the estate as a sibling? I mean, how do you even begin to fill out the mother and father sections on that child's birth certificate without technically committing perjury? This gridlock would ripple through inheritance law, tax law, parental rights, just a complete and utter standstill in the courts.
To prevent total systemic failure, international bodies would have to step in immediately. The United Nations would be scrambling to pass emergency resolutions just to secure unalienable human rights for this infant. And this is absolutely crucial because of how biotech law currently operates. Right now, companies can actually patent unique genetic sequences that they synthesize in a lab. So without immediate UN intervention, that rogue clinic could potentially try to claim intellectual property rights over the child's genome. Yeah, you heard that right. The UN would have to act incredibly fast to prevent the child from being classified as corporate property, or even worse, from being subjected to ongoing, non-consensual medical experimentation by the people who created them. It would be a terrifying race against the clock to ensure this new human is treated legally as a person and not as a patented scientific invention owned by a corporation.
Section 3. Religious and ethical backlash. At the exact same time, an immediate, overwhelming condemnation would pour in from the global religious community. We'd witness something historically incredibly rare here. Major institutions across Christianity, Islam, Judaism, and nearly all other faiths uniting in total theological agreement. They would universally view this act as the ultimate hubris, humanity literally playing God. By separating the creation of life from natural reproduction, the rogue scientists would be crossing a massive theological red line. And this wouldn't just be a few strongly worded letters from religious leaders. No, we would see massive coordinated protests erupting outside the responsible clinic and the embassies of whatever nation harbored them. The moral outcry would be absolutely deafening.
And ethicists and secular philosophers, they'd be sounding the alarm right alongside those religious leaders. They'd warn that we've suddenly stepped onto an incredibly dark, dystopian, slippery slope. The major fear here is what comes next, when human life becomes a manufactured commodity. Would wealthy elites start creating organ insurance clones? Just imagine a horrific reality where clones are grown and kept in isolation solely to provide a perfectly genetically matched liver or heart for a wealthy donor when they get sick. Or think about twisted attempts at immortality, where narcissists just replicate themselves over and over, trying to force their will on the future through a succession of genetic copies. The established ethical guardrails of biology, the ones that have protected human dignity for millennia, would be completely shattered in a matter of days.
Section 4. A fragile medical reality.
Now, behind the geopolitical posturing, the massive media circus, and the ethical debates, we find what is arguably the most tragic aspect of this entire announcement. This newborn child wouldn't just be a controversial public figure. They would be living an incredibly fragile, painful existence. We know from animal cloning experiments, like the famous Dolly the sheep back in 1996, that reproductive cloning is incredibly inefficient and highly, highly dangerous. What people usually forget about Dolly is that it took 277 failed attempts, miscarriages, and severe developmental anomalies just to get one viable sheep. The failure rate is catastrophic. Translating that experimental process to human biology carries horrifying medical consequences for the infant. The science shows us exactly why this procedure is so perilous. A primary threat in cloned mammals is something called large offspring syndrome, or LOS. Basically, this is a severe condition in cloned embryos where organs grow abnormally large, entirely out of sync with the rest of the body. For an infant, this means their heart, liver, or lungs could be far too large for their little chest cavity, leading to severe, often fatal respiratory and circulatory failures immediately after birth. The underlying epigenetic programming, the chemical switches that tell DNA how to operate during development, it gets deeply confused during the cloning process, leading to chaotic and debilitating internal growth.
Furthermore, clones almost universally suffer from severe premature aging, and it's due to a fundamental cellular dilemma. The DNA taken from the adult donor to create the clone already contains shortened telomeres. Think of telomeres as the protective plastic caps on the ends of your shoelaces, but for your chromosomes. Every time your cells divide as you live and age, those caps naturally wear down. So because the clone is created using an adult's DNA, their cellular battery is already worn down from the very moment of conception. It strips the baby of a natural, healthy youth, initiating cellular decay before they even leave the womb.
Tragically, this means the newborn could be born with a genetic age of 30 or 40 years old. Before they even take their first steps or learn to speak, they are practically guaranteed to face conditions we normally associate with middle age: early onset arthritis, advanced heart disease, premature cognitive decline. It's honestly staggering how cruel this reality is. This child's life would be lived under a permanent intensive medical microscope, fighting a biology that is fundamentally working against them from day one. They wouldn't be this gleaming miracle of modern science. They'd be a prisoner in a rapidly deteriorating body, paying the ultimate physical price for someone else's scientific ambition.
Section 5. Dawn of the Gattaca Era.
As the years pass and the profound, long-standing taboo of reproductive cloning is permanently broken, humanity enters a brave and deeply unsettling new world. The initial shock of the first clone would eventually fade, giving way to an aggressive, hyper-competitive underground market for elite genetics. Because, once the tech is proven possible, demand is going to absolutely skyrocket. Wealthy individuals would pour millions of dollars into black market laboratories to genetically engineer and clone deceased loved ones, trying to literally cheat death and grief. We'd start seeing syndicates attempting to clone brilliant scientists or legendary athletes, turning human traits into tradable commodities. We would be actively steering the course of human evolution away from natural selection and the unpredictability of nature, shifting it directly into a laboratory where only the ultra-wealthy hold the reins.
Which brings us to the ultimate crossroads of this explainer. I want to leave you with this final provocative question.
Will humanity abandon the random biological lottery for a fractured society where human worth is predetermined in a laboratory? If we actually cross this line and treat human life as something that can just be customized and copied at will, how do we navigate a world where human potential is no longer a beautiful mystery but a manufactured product? Thanks for diving into this complex topic with me today. I'll leave you to think on that.